Are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the verge of a rebuild? It feels like it's coming, right? Like you got aging players with contract disputes, with Vita Vea wanting to be paid as a good player because he is a good player. Now we don't know necessarily what's the discussion as far as if they want to extend him, if they're going to make him play out this year. He's doing a hold in right now, and maybe they trade him. I don't know what that would end up making the team look like. They do have a couple of D tackles on the team. I think they could survive without Vita Vea, but what Vita Vea gives them is a good, interior pass rusher. But that's not the only weird drama surrounding the Buccaneers. You also have Baker Mayfield calling them out, being like, guys, hello, I don't like this contract you're offering me. Like, he set an arbitrary deadline for training camp. He's like, I wanted to be paid this much and at least get into the $50 million a year club, and I wanted multiple years on the deal.
Wanted the deal done and set the deadline and told them it was going to be all ball after that.
And the Buccaneers like, listen, baby, we the years thing, commitments are hard. And now they're leaking that they got into the $50 million a year category in the offers that they gave them, but let's be real. There's different, there's difference of opinions of what that $50 million really meant, right? Are they offering a 2-year, $100 million deal, but it's an extension? It's only on the new money. So like maybe Baker wanted $50 million for the next 3 years, so he wanted a little bit more, like on that extension, and they're saying no, like you're not getting a pay raise this year. This is just for the new money coming off of this year. So I think that maybe is the bit of the differential there. Could be. Could also be the guarantees. Again, that's why Baker's like, yo, man, I wanted more years, because more years for quarterbacks means usually more guarantees. It's not always the case. But, he wants a commitment. He wanted a ring on the finger. They said, nah, Baker, we're not doing it. Now, to be fair, they could have had more time to go ahead and negotiate this. Baker said, I'm not having any discussions about this after we get to training camp. He set that line. So, and listen, you know what? It's fine. They get to the end of this year. Maybe Baker plays his booty off with the new Zack Robinson OC. Yes, we'll talk about that and how that plays in here. Or maybe, he gets injured again like he did last year, or his last year with the Browns where he had a down year coming off another down year and get booted out of there. I think we're in an interesting situation. Now, it sounds like Baker Mayfield came to play in camp. Now, this is another year in a system that's very familiar to him. Yes, Zack Robinson, new OC, coming from the Atlanta Falcons. But, again, like, we're starting to feel like he knows these Shanahan systems and their variants. It's not, it's not too out there scheme-wise as far as a shift. So Baker coming to town and going like, you know what, man? I'm going to make sure I earn my new contract, whether it's with the Buccaneers or somebody else. So Baker kind of annoying the owners there with, hey, wait a second, we're not as cheap as he's saying we are. I don't know. Like, we'll let time tell, right? Getting ahead of deals is sometimes a good way of making sure, you're not overpaying, but, and sometimes you still end up overpaying. So it goes both ways on that one. This is Baker's personality. He's going to use everything to be a chip on his shoulder. I think Baker was a little bit more amenable to the discount when Mike Evans was there. That was a big deal. Like, I actually do think Mike Evans leaving and seeing the money that Mike Evans took to go to San Francisco and being like, Mike, why didn't we bring back Mike? It wasn't that much money. Why couldn't we have Mike? Mike's a good player, Mike. You guys know Mike? Like, Hall of Fame Mike? Like, so I do think now Mike's older. Mike, I know him on a first-name basis. Mike Evans. You guys know Mike Evans. Good guy. Good receiver. Older. And so, like, that's why his contract wasn't that expensive with the 49ers. And I think that's maybe why Baker's going like, listen, like, I had no problem being here on a $33 million a year deal over, 3 years when I had the receiver who I, absolutely loved throwing to being here. He's not here anymore. Now, a lot of good guys there right now. Ibuka, Godwin, McMillan's coming back after having a scary neck injury last year. So the receiving core, kind of fun. Not it's weird because Godwin feels like we're in late stages of Chris Godwin. Ibuka feels like early stage Chris Godwin. So it's an interesting situation. Now, we saw Ibuka kind of have it down at the end of the year. Some of that, I think, is related to the injury to Baker Mayfield, maybe the injuries to Ibuka as well during the season. But the receiving depth is different, and it is a little weird. This team has not had has not been without Mike Evans for a long time, and he's been a very good receiver for them. Yes, he's had down moments. Yes, he's had some slow moments. I understand moving on. Aging players age out. You got to spend your money wisely. They didn't feel like it was, smart bringing him back. But again, like, part of the reason that you had, like, Baker was maybe more eager to take a certain deal versus another deal is he's been now a guy who, two of his OCs got hired away to be head coaches, and they ended up being good head coaches. Canales with the Panthers, Liam Cohen with the Jags. And yeah, you had last year his OC didn't get hired away. They were more like, we're moving on. I don't even know if necessarily the OC was really the one to blame for that one. But I digress. We're in a situation where they have a new OC. We've seen him with the Atlanta Falcons. I think he had a lot of mixed opinions about him in Atlanta with Zack Robinson, a lot of pistol formation, both with Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix. I think that's why a lot of people are a little concerned, right? Because they saw that the pistol wasn't working a lot. Like, it was because they were able to key in a lot more. Now, some of that might be they were doing the pistol formation a lot more because Kirk Cousins was coming off the Achilles, and then follow that up with Michael Penix, who just didn't seem to have good footwork coming out from under center and trying to run play action, wasn't really good at turning his back to the defense, didn't want to commit to that maybe, I don't know. And again, it might just be a coaching up thing. Like, this is not a knock on Michael Penix. That's not this video. We'll talk Michael Penix later on. But Baker has done those kind of offenses, the under center play action offenses, very well. So we can probably see that, Zack Robinson's not going to walk in here and be like, well, I've seen all these Kyle Shanahan McVay offenses that worked with Baker Mayfield, and I'm going to make him play a whole different version of this that doesn't equal to him being under center. I don't think that's going to be how it goes. I think this is going to be Zack Robinson's trying to resuscitate his offensive coordinator career. So even if he does love the pistol more than most, and I don't know if that's really true, I think it's going to be, hey, we're going to do what works at the quarterback and what fits the offense. This offense was built quite a bit around the McVay Shanahan scheme, and even the way that they've drafted guards and addressed the interior of the offensive line. And let's speak about that. Good offensive line. Not great. They have great players, right? Tristan Wirfs, Luke Goedeke, really good. We've seen, Cody Barton had a down to beginning of the year, but also Cody Barton spent 3 games playing left tackle because Tristan Wirfs was out. So there's some questions, okay, like maybe we can get a little bit better play out of Cody Barton if he's getting to play, actual center the whole year, or if he was playing. I actually thought Barton was a good guard prospect too, so I wasn't really like, I'm a little shocked that they were like, let's just stick him at center if you think guard was actually your bigger issue. I think they like him at center. They trust him at center. I don't think much is changing there. Mock also had kind of like just a mid-year. Bredesen, had a solid year. Again, like the interior of the offensive line is okay, good, solid, not great. Like, and some of that could be, you're dinged up. This is going on. Baker was dinged up. There was a lot of dings, a lot of dinging. So offense-wise, I don't have a lot of super concerns. I guess my concern is the thing that everybody else is concerned about is Zack Robinson going to be good? People were coming in worried about Bucky Irving. They no longer have Rachaad White. Then they bring in Kenneth Gainwell, who's kind of a like form factor similar. They kind of like discount Bucky Irving. If you were like, hey, can I get the not good version of Bucky Irving? Oh, yes, we have that on sale. It's the Kenneth Gainwell. That's what Kenneth Gainwell is. Sorry, Kenny. I didn't mean to shit talk you out there. I think you're a fine player, clearly, because you've been, he's been all around. He's been on the Steelers. He's been on the Eagles. Now he's on the Bucs. He's been around. He's that kind of a player. He's a vet. But so they added some veteran depth and like a good pass blocker. Probably what they brought him in for is a couple of the pass routes. Maybe take that a little bit off of Bucky's plate, because I don't think Bucky's a guy you want to have taking 30 touches a game. So splitting a little bit off and having some opportunity, especially because I think coming into this offseason, there were some lingering questions about the shoulder and all the other things that were bothering him last year. Sounds like he's good to go for camp. So Bucky, it's your game now, buddy. Hopefully he doesn't get too injured. But we see guys like Kyron Williams now marching with the ball, and maybe they just go ahead and draft somebody next year in a good draft where, hey, we'll go ahead and get another running back to fill out the rest of the depth chart. No more Rachaad White to be the big bruiser that can kind of help out and catch the ball and not necessarily be great at vision stuff. sometimes had some good runs, but was a very like hit or miss runner, very good pass catcher, and I think that was like a unique element to what Rachaad White did very well, was being a good pass catcher of the ball. But again, I like this. I like the offense pieces, right? Like I like the offensive pieces. Good year can be in the cards here. Otten and Wirtz and Godwin, McMillan. Godwin was coming off of an injury last year, right? So maybe, another year removed from the injury, Godwin gets a little bit of recovery time, and you have a Godwin and Egbuka and McMillan, trio that, if they stay healthy, can be very good. Yeah, and by the way, not the only receivers on the team. Not the only receiver. They did draft a dude, Ted Hurst, kind of a big, kind of size speed combo dude. I think that might be a dude who might, there's now the phrase sacrificial X being thrown out there on the interwebs. But, I think it's weird because there's not, like, again, after losing Evans, you lost your actual reliable X. So now you need to come up with sacrificial X's to be, for lack of a better term. They also have kind of they have a dude maybe in Tez Johnson, who was a returner, had some play time last year, looked pretty solid at moments. So I don't know. I guess they're never really replacing Mike Evans. Like, it's very hard to do that. But offensively, like, you got all these kind of cool pieces. Baker has shown that he can kind of get things going, especially if he has the chip on his shoulder. He just seems to play a lot better. Zack Robinson, I think, we might see what the full wheelhouse of Zack Robinson might really be. Like, maybe he has more to offer for this team that maybe he couldn't do while he was working with the Atlanta Falcons. I think there's some questions about this team. Offensively, I think Baker, I know what, I kind of believe in Baker to a degree. I don't know if there's a range of outcomes of Baker, and very much scheme dependent, very much coach dependent, very much other player dependent, like a lot of players. But he can, like, if you put the right things around him, he can take this team into the playoffs and maybe do a little bit more. I don't know if that whole level of quality is there for the team right now, which is why I think maybe the Buccaneers were looking at this whole situation going like, listen, we kept Todd Bowles. Now we have Vita Vea wanting to hold in. Now we have Baker Mayfield wanting more commitment from us. Really? Baker, thank you. But I do understand where the Bucs are maybe looking at it going, maybe next year's a full reset. Like, and so, maybe not committing more than 2 years to Baker might buy them some time of like, all right, like, if it's a 2-year deal, we can maybe move off of him after next year. Maybe they draft a dude if this ends up being a really messed up year. So I think Baker also acknowledges, like, listen, man, like, you got to get paid, and he's in his 30s, and maybe this is one of his last couple of, I think he'll probably have another contract after this, especially, usually players do like 2-year deals if they can get the right amount of money out of them. I think that's, he's saying I wanted more money. He's saying I wanted more years. He wanted more years of commitment. That's really it. That they can't just move off of him after next year if it doesn't go well. So I digress. Offense, Baker, Godwin, McMillan, Tez, Egbuka, baby. I Kate Otten. I don't have much else to say about that. I think I was hoping they would sign or a free agent tight end or do something more funky with the tight ends than what they ended up getting. But we'll move on. I mean, Sean Tucker's there as well. He Sean Tucker must not die. He will be they brought him back as a running back. Let's talk defense, because that's we talked Vita Vea a little bit. And let's talk real on this. And by the way, we did talk a little bit about the draft with Ted Hurst. He was their 3rd round pick 84, Georgia State Panthers. And so, like, again, kind of more of a tall, lanky, speed down the field guy. Like I said, sacrificial X. But a lot of that draft was more along the lines of defense. And I think there's actually a lot of questions to be had with this defense because they lost another good player from the defense, right? Jamal Dean left in free agency. But, they drafted some guys last year, Jacob Parrish, Benjamin Morrison. Zion McCollum's been there. He's been there. Like, we've seen good moments from Zion, some good moments. But But like the back end of this defense used to be Carlton Davis and Jamal Dean, who were very good players, and Antoine Winfield, and that was the premier team. That was what got them the chip. And right now, you look at this team and you go, a lot of questions. Still still have Antoine Williams, Antoine Winfield, not Antonio Williams. That's a different dude. Still have Antoine Winfield Jr., very good safety. Their safety room's actually, like, I think kind of the backbone of the back end, right? Antoine Winfield and Tyke Smith. You're now in another year of him, and he's been pretty solid. Pretty solid safety. The corners, again, McCollum's played pretty solid. Like, it's just a lot of solid dudes, and then Benjamin Morrison, who did not play well at all. You're now expecting him to go ahead and replace, basically what you're missing now after Jamal Dean leaves. So can they find a way of fixing that? Maybe some pass rush, right? Because that's kind of the way. That's always been the discussion. Can you cover up your defensive issues with some pass rush or some scheme? The safeties allow you to do that a little bit with the scheme. But looking around at some of the other pieces that they also lost, they also might lose Vita Vea if they trade him. They also lost, I know. Oh, well, let's talk about what they brought in. Then we'll talk about what they lost. Because what the heck, man? How are you forgetting this? They lost somebody else. Retired too. The L isn't there. There's an L. I feel like I'm taking an L on that one. It's been a while. But let's talk what they got. Right? Let's talk a little bit what they got. Alex Anzalone, free agent. They also drafted Ruben Bane Jr. Felt him at 15. This is a guy who's talked about as maybe the best pass rusher in this last NFL draft. Levante David. I was right with the L. It was Levante David. See, I didn't have to look it up. My hands were here the whole time, I swear. And I have no producer. So, yes, it was Levante David. They lost Levante. God damn it, Levante. But this is probably the time for Levante to retire, move on, get a new job, maybe just vacation, go to the Bahamas, spend some time traveling, maybe get on to his next career as maybe a disc jockey, right? Maybe go DJ Levante. Oh, that has a good ring to it, actually. Let's go. DJ Levante. Let's hear it. But yeah, so unfortunately, Levante David retires, and now we've got a linebacking core of guys. Servakia Dennis, Alex Anzalone, who I mentioned before, free agent, who's on the Lions, and previous to that, he was on the Saints, and maybe he fits. He's more of a coverage backer, which kind of, I think he'll be solid. But again, you brought some veteran depth to help bridge out some of the roster. Also, second-round pick Josiah Trotter of the Missouri Tigers, another dude that you can kind of bring in here and be like, all right, we're gonna flesh this out. Maybe we find a dude, linebacker. There's a lot of different options. Kind of figure out that linebacking room. And we'll find out if Servakia Dennis ends up being a guy. He has so far not so much. So let's talk about the defensive line room, right? We already talked Vita Vea, very good player. Now he's post 30, so I think he's looking to get that last contract deal and kind of that's why he's sitting there going listen, man, this might be my last shot. I could tear my Achilles or my patella or my booty hole tomorrow. So why wouldn't I want to get my money? And I know Spot Track says 2 years, $25 million is probably what his next deal will be. I don't know if that's including the current. Is that a raise on what he currently has? And to be fair, when you look at what he's currently making compared to the rest of the D-tackle market, he probably does deserve a raise. Now, that does not sound like that's the thing that is the holdup. It's he wants an extension. Again, commitment, like Baker said, put a ring on it. I want some money. I want to be here long term. I've done my business. I can probably work here for the next couple of years, right? I don't know if it's 2 years, $25 million. I don't know if it's less than that. A lot of these extension deals get said out loud like they're going to be a lot bigger. But then what ends up happening, especially with these post 29 to 30 players, it's not really that. I mean, you saw it with Dexter Lawrence. Everybody was saying way bigger numbers than what he ended up getting in the after post trade. So, and we'll talk him on another thing for the Giants. But I digress. Again, Vita Vea holding in, shows up, going, all right, guys. Oh no, my booty hole hurt. My booty hole hurt. My booty hole hurt. Can't practice. The whole Ted Lasso thing. Practice. So what do they have on the team? They did sign. They brought back Rakeem Nunez-Roches in free agency. Depth guy, knows the scheme, knows Todd, knows him on a first name basis, calls him Toddy, the hottie. Yeah, he's very hot. I get it, man. I get it. He's stacked. But Rakeem, familiar with the scheme. They also brought in a Sean Robinson, dude who has played it very well at D-tackle at moments in his career. I think we're past the point of him being like an elite dude. I know there was like moments you're like, oh my God, is it there? And it just never really sat there for a long period. Like it was never ended up being like, oh, that guy. He ended up being like, okay, that guy. Like, good player, not great player, solid. And again, to fill out the rotation, great. As an addition to Vita Vea, kind of a nice guy like to have on that roster, to have, a Sean Robinson, Rakeem Nunez-Roches, Vita Vea, maybe cutting down on Vita Vea's snaps a little bit, not having to fully rely on him. And again, allowing him to kind of get at it as both an interior pass rusher and as a good run defender. And, and you maybe are hoping you see another step forward in Kalijah Kancey. I think kind of the one young gun in that defensive tackle room. Who else is on that? Yeah, I think that's the extent of that defensive tackle room, which is kind of like, Elijah Roberts, maybe they're hoping something comes out of him a little bit more, but not, again, like this D-tackle room, they're hoping they can get a bit more out of what they can utilize here, I think. And, I think losing Vita Vea, that makes those veterans, if those veterans have to be like the starters, I don't love that D-tackle room. If that's your D-tackle room with Vita Vea, you kind of like it. So, like, I don't know what the money is for Vita. I don't know what the right number is. I can't imagine it really is like a 2-year, $50 million a year deal. Maybe it is. Maybe. I don't know. But maybe a raise and like a couple-year extension that you're probably not fully feeling, or you're only really committing to next year anyway. And I don't know. I think it's a big deal right now, but I also understand where the team's coming from. Again, like I said when we were talking before about Baker, this is a team that is in a weird state, right? It could all fall apart tomorrow. Next year they could be looking for a new head coach, a new quarterback, and need a whole new rebuild of this roster. A new star receiver, new quarterback, new head coach. This could be like a make or break year for a lot of this roster. And I wouldn't be shocked if the Bucs make it to the playoffs. I also wouldn't be shocked if this is the moment right before the full rebuild. And we'll find out next time on Dragon Ball Z. But this time on Dragon Ball Z, let's talk a little bit. Still got like 2 more things to talk about. This defense, edge rush, right? I already talked a little bit about Ruben Bane adding to that pass rush room. I like him. I like the addition of him. I think, between him and Yaya Diaby, I think you have a fun, first of all, also a cool name room, right? Yaya and Bane, man. The Bane of Yaya. I love that those pass rushers there. They also have a couple of other dudes that they've drafted over years. Chris Braswell. Maybe this will be the guy, that also can step up and show up a little bit more as well. But, Anthony Nelson they brought in, or I don't even know, maybe he wasn't already on the roster, but I know that was a guy who he's kind of bounced around a little bit. So I don't know if I have to check his history. But Braswell, maybe if he takes a step forward, they were talking big about him last year. He didn't really show up. Yaya did show up a little bit. Yaya has been a very solid edge rusher for them. So, Ruben, I think Ruben and Yaya, I think, is the big deal here. If those two guys end up being, the dudes, and they can keep Vita Vea, and Vita can, if Vita plays out this year, or they extend him, and I think they are looking to maybe extend him after this year, but then I think Vita after this year is going to be like, well, I'm going to go free market, babe. Come on. I got to be a capitalist about this stuff if he has to play out the rest of this year. And again, like, you don't really, what happens when you try to challenge the guy doing the hold in? I don't know. Injuries happen too, and he's asked for the trade. We'll see what happens. But I think this could be a very interesting year for the Buccaneers. Like, follow, subscribe. Tune in next time for when I talk about whatever team I end up talking about.
When I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous. About the past, about the future.